A Light in the Darkness Chapter 46b, 47, Fan Fiction by Azazyel. Lastly, of course, in the last great ravine that opened up came a tide of Slaanesh's legions of excess. Countless Daemonettes of all shapes, ranging from sinful beauties that drew my eyes with their completely humanoid form that was almost perfection, to more monstrous forms that took humanoid form but had obvious mutations like crab claws and hands made into blades in order to more easily bring the pleasure of agony to their victims. With another greater demon that was leading them, that I could faintly recognize as her actions lay in only one demon I knew. The mask of Slaanesh, the once most favorite servant of the hedonistic god, but thrown aside in one of the god's moments of rage and cursed to forever dance non-stop. Her seductive dance, empowered by her supernatural charm, was so powerful that she could lift the control of the hive minds from the Daemonettes, leaving them merely extremely dangerous animals rather than a cohesive force they typically were. Chapter 47. Sure, the greater demon mask of Slaanesh was scary, with even her mutated form attracting my eyes, but the greatest threat was that cinch greater demon that had taken to the field. Magnus the Red. The demon primarch of the traitorous Thousand Sun Legion was leading this force of demons with his psychically spread orders, spreading to all within the planet via some sorcery. See the mass of demons. I didn't cheer and dash back into battle. Nope, I turned around and quietly went back home to watch the battles from the safety of the Sex Veil. Let the abominable demons tear at the monstrous Daemonettes. Myself, I was going to calmly enjoy watching this battle from the safety of my sect. As I was so far out of my league, I knew I couldn't even flee the planet with the forces assembled upon it. This is why I need to make a teleporting pad to another of the system's moons or something. I cursed as I got back into the Veil and began watching the demons of chaos go to war with the Daemonettes. And what a sight it was! The Daemonettes, feeling the stress of having several greater demons spawn and pushing back the shadow in the warp, unveiled one of their own trump cards as Bio-Titans fell from the atmosphere, and in the midst of the Bio-Titans falling to the surface of the planet from the hive ships above was a Titan-sized terrifying Daemonette. I could recognize the Swarm Lord in an instant. Daemonettes did not waste such massive amounts of powerful biomass and might to reincarnate the Swarm Lord unless the Swarm deemed the use of calling upon the strongest Daemonette was to be worth its cost. Although I couldn't guess what the true mind behind the Daemonettes were doing, but honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if this was just a test run to see how their forces dealt with such higher-level foes so that they could plan for methods on how to more easily take chaos-tainted worlds in the future. As by all rights, seeing the forces of chaos pushing back so fiercely as to push back the shadow in the warp should have been a sign for them to retreat with the biomass they had already collected and cut their losses. But yet they not only are fighting ever more doggedly, but they were also dropping in such reinforcements. Although watching the forces Nurgle and Slaanesh fight was a sight of their own, with Nurgle's slow-moving abominable monstrosity lumbering through the battle, casting pox that rotted the Daemonettes' flesh, and Slaanesh's forces dancing across the battlefield as they tore out joints with their wicked bladed whips and scythes. But the greatest cataclysmic battle that kept my gaze was the Swarm Lord dueling both the demon primarch Magnus the Red and the Khorne greater demon I couldn't recognize at the same time. The Swarm Lord had 4 arms, each bearing a crystalline saber of some indeterminate material that could ignore the fell spells carved upon Magnus' armor to carve through it, as the demon primarch had already lost the massive elephant-like tusks that used to adorn his chest plate and stuck out. And with the Swarm Lord's thickly clawed feet, it was able to maneuver across the battlefield, matching the greater demon of Khorne's heavy-handed axe blows that shattered the nearby hills and sending debris from the impact of each blow for miles. For all that Magnus was capable of sundering the Swarm Lord in arcane might, the Eldritch Chitin and full might of the Daemonette's psychic shielding nullified his famed reality-warping sorcery, forcing the Primarch to abandon his vaunted Pisker abilities besides seemingly augmenting his corrupted malformed body to new heights as his large cinch-colored wings allowed the Primarch to fly around the Swarm Lord and harry him with his massive glaive that screamed with hellish lightning, while the Khorne greater demon used its full might to try to give the demon Primarch an opening, even as the Swarm Lord cut swathes through demons alike with its whirling 4 arms. It was to the point that only one arm of the Swarm Lord's 4 were enough to block or knock aside the demon's individual attacks with its red crystalline sabers that cut through the Khorne demon's flesh like it was butter. But the rage and pain only made the Khorne demon allow its strength to reach new heights as it roared in primal fury. Blood for the Blood God. Your skull will make a centerpiece for my lord's collection. The Khorne demon roared triumphantly as it allowed the Swarm Lord to piece two sabers into its chest, but before the Swarm Lord could retract the weapons, the demon tensed its chest muscles, making the Swarm Lord freeze for not even a tenth of a second as its swords were locked within the chest of the demon. But in that infinitely tiny moment of the swords being pinched in the demon, the Swarm Lord ate a powerful laser beam to the face shot from Magnus and let go of the swords as it hopped into the air to drop-kick the skyscraper-sized demon across the planet, and while still in midair, respond to Magnus' laser beam by vomiting ultradense bioplasma onto Magnus. But the demon Primarch ignored the plasma that burned at the temperature of the sun that coated his form like a gel napalm as he took the chance to cut through the thick exoskeleton of the Swarm Lord, carving out its chest and frying its internal organs with the eldritch sorcery that filled the glaive. The world seemed to go silent as Magnus collapsed onto his knee groaning in pain as his demonic flesh bubbled and popped under the insanely high-temperature corrosive acid that was spat on him by the Swarm Lord, who was just shuddering as purple lightning bounced between the thick bone plating that coated its body before it itself collapsed to the ground as the chaos sorceries tore at its internals. Before I could react, though, to even run to maybe go collect one of the weapons, be it the Swarm Lord's swords or even Magnus' glaive, I saw the greater demon of Khorne had gotten back up on its hoofed feet, and with a roar, he finished off the Swarm Lord with a roar as it hefted up its massive great axe, and with one swing that could have songs written of it. The axe shattered chitin and tore through flesh as it removed the head of the Swarm Lord, with the head being grabbed and heaved into the air as the demon of Khorne roared in victory. Then the greater demon of Khorne staggered before falling headfirst into the ground as all the Swarm Lord's swords self-destructed, with the two swords buried into the greater demon's chest all but evaporated the demon's chest cavity as the swords exploded, with the swords on the ground next to Magnus also exploding with all the fury of a nuclear bomb, throwing the demon Primarch across the battlefield so fast that his form was like a star as bio-titans, hills, and demons alike exploded at impacting. With the rag-dolling Primarch,